I am still dealing with the exact same situation I began documenting in 2019-20. So I'm going to go over it in great detail right now. Xavier is going to be here to help me. We're going to call this a therapy session. So here we go. So 2015 came around. I was working in my 6th year as the administrator for specifically endocrinology and rheumatology. I had Dr. Susan Burke, Dr. Walter Stoller, Dr. Renee Aronson, Dr. Carly Scamra, Dr. Linda Maletti, 5 doctors. Every other woman had 1 doctor, all the other assistants. I was not getting paid for 5 doctors. I don't blame any of my doctors for this. I feel like if any one of my doctors ever needed anything, whether they could pay for it or not, if they needed me to come, help them with anything, I would do it. I get along with them fabulously, all their quirks. I trust them. I know that they trust me, and I know that they know who I am. This is pertinent in understanding my situation because you don't work in healthcare for 10 years and go off the radar undetected as being a crazy person or a sociopath. It's just not realistic. So the defense that they're using saying that I'm crazy is bullshit. That's number one. Number two, there was a period of time in my experience when my mental health was declining sharply and steeply, and that was because I was being and that was because I was being extorted by a member of local government and several other people, and basically pushed into the arms of a more experienced and seasoned, some of you might want to call him a criminal, and some of you might want to call him an investigator, and some of you might want to call him a con artist, and I would argue that all 3 are true. But to the point of being pushed into the arms of this person, when the authority that you have been raised to believe in and trust becomes your oppressor, becomes the source of your pain, fear, aggravation, confusion, etc., and so forth, you will grab onto whatever you can, whomever you can, that has any sort of anchor into documentation, law, advocacy, etc., and so forth. The detective, so while working at Northwestern, I had a late postpartum hemorrhage after delivering Alexis. She was born in 2013. 2014 is when I finally said, I need to start looking for another job. And I found my next job in either late 2014 or early 2015. I became an office manager for an ophthalmic practice called Infinity Optical in Chicago on Irving and Narragansett, a boutique clinic for testing and treating disorders and diseases of the eyes, as well as fitting patients for contact lenses and glasses. My primary roles and responsibility there were very similar to what they were at Northwestern, but I felt like it was a better fit because they also incorporated some fashion aspects. We were vendors of upscale frames, so Dolce & Gabbana, Ray-Ban, basically any Luxottica brand we were selling. We also had Chanel and Dior at the Winnetka location, Eyes on the Lake. Now, working in these positions, I really enjoyed myself and I felt like I was a fabulous match. However, when I was getting a divorce from my second husband and we weren't legally married, we were just living together and together every day and have a child together. And she was my 3rd of 4 children, Alexis. Her big brother and sister, Vivi and Lewis, and I all lived together. So me, Alexis, Vivi, Lewis. I had established custody in the eyes of the court as the primary custodial parent in 2018. However, the kids lived with me their entire lives, a minimum of 4 or 5 days out of the week, and they'd go with their father on the weekend. The big kids' grandparents would pick them up every single day from my home, no matter where I lived, and take them back to their house to prepare them for school. Because since I was a renter and they owned a home, we decided together that it was in the best interest of my children for continuity and the purpose of making friends, etc., and so forth, that they would attend the public school where my in-laws owned a home. So that's what we did. Now, picking them up and dropping them off every day, shout out to my in-laws and thank you so much for your help because, yeah, that's exhausting. School is early. To get up that early and drive up to, 15 miles away to pick up the kids. I'm very grateful that I had that assistance. But the point, nonetheless, is that the children lived with me on a full-time basis. And I have doctors, besides the doctors that I responded to immediately or reported to on a daily basis, there were probably close to 40 or 50 other physicians within the practice who I had FaceTime with on a daily basis, maybe even more. When you talk about other departments of the hospital, it's just the list is endless. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Now, to speak to the point that you couldn't be crazy in the company of these people. Well, of course you can have your quirks and you can be anxious and you can have these other diagnoses, but when a person claims that someone is too crazy to raise their children, that's a different kind of crazy. That's a kind of crazy that would not be functional in an office environment, in a professional environment. So any one of these doctors, in order to get their medical license, must be able to distinguish a mental health crisis. It's part of their training. You don't have to be a psychologist. You don't have to go and, refine your skill set and focus to just psychology, but you would need to have a basic level of understanding. Everyone basically starts out as an internist. That's the way that the training goes. Then if you decide that you'd like to get into specialty care, you have, a more focused and rigorous second half of college. Now, as I said, there was never any concern for craziness, but I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression when I was 17 years old. I was sent to Jamaica at 15 years old and abandoned there for a year. And I don't believe it was my mother's fault. So before you go running your mouth about I just am not a good criminal. I have no criminal record still to this day, other than driving or the underage drinking. But at that time, I had very little to absolutely no experience with any sort of police interaction or investigations. Now, this detective approached me with a paper box filled with reams of paper, but there were no reams of paper in them. It was filled to the top instead with random loose pieces of paper, copies of various photographs on regular office paper, copies of people's Facebook profiles with their profile photo and their nickname next to their profile photo. And this is in the day of Facebook when you did not need to verify your identity. You did not need to list your legal name. Things have been changed since that time. But in 2015, anyone could open a Facebook. You didn't need to put, your personal information. You could write your name down as, Big H. And you'd be Big H, right? They didn't make you give a legal name. So he's presenting all of these nickname Facebook profiles to me. Some of them have animals as the profile pic. Some of them have actual photographs. Some of them have pictures of the scene, the industry, etc. Now, mind you, I've only been working bottle service for approximately 2 months at this time. 2 months in bottle service life is Friday and Saturday for 2 months. So that's six to eight shifts, because I definitely had weekends where I just worked one night. So that's 6 to 8 shifts. So that's not a lot of time. On top of that, let's describe what an industry bottle service girl is doing. We were not working in a high volume nightclub. We were working in a private, low volume, members only type of establishment where the girls would come out after we were done getting ready, and we would stand in a line, and all the ballers would look at us, have us turn around, and then pick what girl they wanted to literally waitress their party. And the waitress of the party was expected to serve all the drinks, but you were also expected to not turn down a drink. And I had no experience drinking. I was 100% full-time dedicated to the gym. I was exercising at least once a day, 7 days a week, if not 2 times a day. I was meal prepping with 0 deviations, no sweets, no salt, using only Mrs. Dash to cook. I had a customized prep plan from Christian McCoy, and I was on it. I mean, on it. So when I started having to drink alcohol, yes, they show you how to kind of like conceal it so it looks like you're drinking, but you spit it back in. That shit wasn't working for me, okay? Whatever I was absorbing in my tongue or in my cheeks, I was getting fucked up for no reason. Like, just spitting out alcohol was getting me drunk. I had no tolerance. After 2 months of working in that capacity, I could probably have drank, a reasonable amount and been okay. So my tolerance built quickly. Now, one of these customers, one night after working at this bottle service establishment where you were paid $50 to show up, if you didn't get picked, you got sent home with $50. If you did get picked, you were making between probably $200 and $600. No sex, no nudity, nothing like that. But you were making, you were banking if you got picked. And I got picked every single night. I don't think there was a single night that I didn't get picked. I don't think so. Possibly one, but I really don't think so. Anytime, and we only hosted 2 to 4 parties a night. So there were a lot of girls too. So I was getting picked very frequently, and I was making a lot of money doing it. I was making comparable to what I made all week long at the eye doctor as the office manager in 2 nights at the bottle service location. So after the bottle service location, I met girlfriends, or while I was still there, and I met other single moms, and I met women who had careers. I met women in college for rocket science, literally, and I also met women who had no desire to have a career, dropped out of high school, and were 100% dedicated to sex work or spicy content or whatever they were doing. So there was a huge variety of women that were working in this bottle service location. One of the women invited me to go to get a drink at a club. I said yes. I went one time with her. One time I interacted with her customers from the lounge that we met up at this other club. And these people, I had no idea who they were. I met them one time. I probably spent, I would say, about 12 hours with them, 9 of which I was fucked up, probably beyond being able to even articulate. Probably, as a matter of fact, should be definitely, beyond the ability to articulate. Now, I had only hung out with them this one time, and this person, this officer, this detective who picked me off the street, this was probably about a week after that this happened. So I did not really know these people very well at all whatsoever. And I had also met Dylan, who's my co-star from Love After Lockup. At that time, he was living in Pilsen, hosting a party or attending a party with his, at that time, girlfriend, who just so happened to be the target of this detective's investigation, and I had no idea. He presented to me a paper box filled with evidence, Facebook profile photos and video evidence of people at the club, various different things. I told him exactly the truth. I have no idea who these people are. I met them maybe one time. I met them maybe one time. I said, I have no idea. I said, I've seen them do drugs, but who doesn't do drugs in the club? I said, I'd be hard pressed to find a single person who comes into the club that isn't drunk or high or both. So I don't know what you want me to tell you, but I don't know. He said, you're going to make it your job to stay around these people. And if you don't, I am going to show up at your house with the DCFS, and we are going to take your children. I had no criminal record, nothing but 10 years experience in the medical field. I was 28 years old, okay? So from fresh out of high school, I got my medical assisting degree, phlebotomy degree. I immediately started working 18 years old as a full-time medical assistant while still putting myself in college for nursing. Nursing was my primary major. After the kid's father and I broke up, I had to change my major because I could no longer attend on campus. I was going for prereqs for nursing at Triton College, and Triton College also had easy access to West Suburban and easy access to the ultrasound tech program in River Grove at Triton. So I figured that was a good place to do my gen eds and my prereqs and get the associate's degree out of the way, and then transfer to four-year college, West Suburban. It would have been cheaper, et cetera, and so forth. I ended up having to transfer my credits to an online university called American Intercontinental University. And when you do that, there are no clinical hours here in Chicago. You have to take an administrative profession or nothing at all, because there are no clinical, there's no doctorate that you can take online. There's no nursing that you can take online. There are several classes you can take hybrid, online and in person, but you have to be hands-on. You have to be in lab. You have to be working in externship and things of that nature. So I transferred my major from nursing to administration and new business development in healthcare, medical law, and ethics, which mainly focused on how to run a medical office to the best of your ability, to be in the middle, bipartisan, if you will, to the doctors and the management staff. And it was kind of giving us a heads up that we were heading in the direction of electronic medical records, that the United States government was no longer going to be supplementing or repaying any sort of doctor's office for Medicaid, Medicare payments unless they were moving to electronic medical records so that they could, better monitor the type of care that was being given to these patients. So I just learned a whole lot about a whole lot, and I learned there was a lot of overlap. I had taken another 9-month program for medical office specialist at the First Institute in Lombard, Illinois. I had taken another program at the School for Healthcare Careers on Cumberland, right by the 90 and Cumberland, in one of those really tall buildings, Illinois School of Medical Careers. That's where I did my medical assisting and phlebotomy. So I have altogether, I would say, about 6 years of healthcare experience, of healthcare education experience. So there's really not much that I don't know about that: billing, coding, HIPAA, medical law and ethics, new business development, electronic medical record implementation, standards, OSHA standards, ethical and moral standards, reimbursement structures, things of that nature. Now, after working in that capacity with 2 small children and separating from both Lewis and Orlando, and then it became 3 small children, Vivi and Lewis are about 18 months apart, and Alexis is about 8 years younger. So 6 to 8 years younger. So there was a big period where my big kids were starting to get self-sufficient, and I became pregnant with Alexis. As I said, I had a late postpartum hemorrhage with Alexis after I gave birth to her, and I found myself in a space where I had kind of overexerted myself, assisting 5 doctors to every other assistant's 1 doctor, and I was exhausted. I was working off the clock 2 to 3 hours a night, almost every night. I was coming in, if I wasn't working 2 hours later, I was coming in an hour earlier and working off the clock because we were being threatened. If we worked on the clock past 30 hours, we were not only going to not get paid, but we were going to
Old Navy presents Holiday Denim. Dancing and dazzling.